I'm hiding.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Hi there.
Hey, appreciate you meeting me.
Well, thank you for having me.
I have you see over here. I figured the wall would be better for your background. That's why I chose to be on this side. I have these, if you don't mind wearing it.
That's what I put it on.
These, just so you know, they slide off. They're kind of new. But anyway, they slide off and they rotate to whatever direction you want to go to. But however, as long as they're on here somewhere, they're fine.
Okay, I think that'll work.
There we go.
Is that good?
Yeah, that works. I'd make sure, because I plugged them in on this phone and they wouldn't record, so I plugged them in this phone. Recording equipment. Aggravating.
Yeah, good stuff.
Alrighty. Alright, you are running for candidate for sheriff. You are currently Somerset, Ohio Chief of Police. Robert J. Schons.
That's right. It's pronounced Schons.
Schons. Yeah, I figured I would screw up something.
That's okay. I was close enough. I've been called worse. So
I'm sure of that, and you will continually, I'm sure. Would you rather be called Robert, Rob, or Bob?
Bob's fine.
Bob's fine.
Yeah,
I've seen both on your website as well, so I just wanted to be respectful there.
Thank you.
All right. So if you would, even though we've already went over your name, say your name again for everybody. That way they know the pronunciation. And what you're running for.
My name is Bob Schons, and I'm running for Perry County Sheriff.
Okay. Why sheriff?
Well, people are concerned about the present state of law enforcement in this county. They're concerned about their safety of their families, their communities, their neighborhoods. For whatever reasons, there's a long list of perhaps why they are concerned. I believe that I have intimate knowledge of the cause of why law enforcement's in its present state here. And I have the experience and the skill set to fix those problems.
Okay. Why Perry County?
Well, I came here to Perry County. I was a little bit of background. After I retired from Columbus Police, I wanted to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is I wanted to give back. I wanted to use my experience to give back to young people in law enforcement. So I reached out to agencies around the area, and the Perry County Sheriff's Office asked me to come aboard, the chief deputy back at that time, with a vision of having me help bring that office up to what we call best practices in law enforcement in the state.
Okay.
So that's what brought me here to Perry County. And we had some good ideas to change some things here, and it didn't work out the way we thought it would. I thought a lot of those ideas fell upon deaf ears. And then the opportunity presented itself in Somerset.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that time when I took over that job, my sole goal was to be the best police chief I could for the people in Somerset.
Okay.
So,
you went to high school in Dayton, Ohio. I'm not going to pronounce or try to pronounce that. I'll let you do that. Well, how do you pronounce the name of the high school?
I went to high school at Chaminade-Julienne in Dayton, Ohio.
There you go.
Home of the Fighting Eagles.
Fighting Eagles.
Yes.
Sometime after graduating high school, you go on to get your basic law enforcement education at Clark County Community College in Springfield, Ohio. What motivated you to be a police officer?
Well, what motivated me to be a police officer, it's all started when I was in 4th grade. We had a career day,
mm-hmm.
and a narcotics officer from Huber Heights Police Department came to our class and explained to us and talked to us about what he did and how satisfying it was for him and his family, for him to be able to serve the people in our community. And that really stuck with me. And from that moment on, I knew that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to be a cop when I grew up.
Okay. From June 1997 to June of 2020, you worked for the Columbus Ohio Division of Police. On your website, you mentioned you worked in suburban, inner city, and near Ohio State University. What experience did you gain from these areas you worked at?
What it gave me is the knowledge and appreciation that each different community, each different neighborhood is unique, and how you go about serving the people in those areas can be different. So you appreciate the fact that the people in that neighborhood that you serve are special, and you have a vested interest in serving and protecting them the best you can. You analyze crime data and analyze crime patterns to prevent that crime and to investigate that crime properly to best serve the people in that community. So if you work, say, I worked in the area outside um, Children's Hospital, that area would be different than their drug issues, their issues with B&Es, their issues with burglaries or robberies would be different than, say, when I worked over on 15th Precinct over in the Hilliard area. So you have a whole different economic makeup. You have a whole different you have different cultures. All those things come into play. So if you want to serve those people the best you can, then you adjust your policing to do that. So I think that gave me a great experience, and I really appreciated and enjoyed that.
Okay. Explain what you did in the Special Victims Bureau.
Well, the Special Victims Bureau is made up of several different units. One of them being the child abuse unit, and that's what I did. Now, the child abuse unit is then broken into two separate disciplines. One is the sexual abuse squad, sexual child abuse squad, and the physical child abuse squad. I was with the physical child abuse squad, and we investigated uh, just what it says, the physical abuse against children and the emotional abuse, what some would call neglect. So we were comprehensively, very extensively trained on the investigation of physical and emotional child abuse against, well, obviously against children, but uh, there was also an overlap in our investigation in the sexual child abuse, because there was a lot of you know, overlap in the abuse and what the criminal pattern would be, whether it be sexual child abuse or physical. A lot of times they would be both. We also worked, say with other units, assault squad, and if the abuse was of a felonious nature, which we investigated, but we would collaborate with assault squad for guidance. And if the abuse resulted in the death of a child, we would work with the homicide squad. So we had a lot of specific training in that, but also a broad view of how we can, the total investigation into the whole picture of whatever the result of that abuse would be.
Okay. Explain Physical Abuse Squad and your role.
Well, what I alluded to just now was what we did in the physical abuse squad. We in child abuse altogether, there was about 28 detectives. There was 4 sergeants, 2 lieutenants. We averaged around 12 cases a week per detective. So we were very busy. What was very rewarding about that job was putting away perpetrators that
should be put away. Yeah.
Well, right, but any criminal should be put away. But
Right.
I think society looks at abuse against children or crimes against children as especially heinous. And so to be able to investigate those, and they're very sensitive, very delicate, intricate cases, because your victim, the vast majority of the time, is not verbal. or you don't want to, if they're of an age where they can, explain what happened to them. It's something that's so delicate that you want to keep them away from having to testify on a stand, which is very intimidating.
Yeah.
There's a nexus to drugs a lot in these cases. They're very difficult to investigate and bring to successful prosecution. So the training was very intense. It was very rewarding, all-consuming, because it is a traumatic thing when children are abused to the point where they die or almost die.
Right.
Yeah, the experience of that, I think, was very, very rewarding, and it was a great experience. The thing also about it's hard, I think, to investigate these types of crimes in the sense of being able to interview or interrogate suspects or even witnesses to this, because of the social aspect of society looking at it. It is such a heinous crime. Nobody's ever really going to admit to them having done something so bad. Right.
I would imagine not directly.
Right. So the art of being able to interview somebody to get them to admit to doing it, to give a confession, is probably the most difficult type of interview or interrogation that you would have to do. I think, doing a homicide interview or an assault or robbery interview has a whole different angle to it. And so that was very, very complex and challenging. And I worked with a great bunch of detectives and learned a lot from them. And when I left that unit, it was very hard to do because it was a great job.
Well, you mentioned the developing questions and the interview and interrogation process being a bit of an art. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there, because, like you said, it's a sensitive issue, and no one wants to admit to something so heinous directly. It's usually using an art to get to that.
That's exactly right. There's ways to go about doing that. You're trained in that. I think coming from Columbus with the resources they have, and to be able to train their people. We go to the Detective Bureau. You go into investigations is broken down into several different bureaus, and then those bureaus are broken down into different squads, which you have a discipline where you investigate. But like I said, my discipline was physical and emotional child abuse. Now, the overlapping aspect of that is we worked a lot with sexual child abuse, but that squad was down at Children's Hospital at the CAC, right? So that's how in depth they worked, and we worked hand in hand with Franklin County Children's Services, and with the doctors, especially at Children's Hospital, because Children's Hospital being such a world known hospital as far as how they treat children.
Right.
They're one of the best in the world, in my opinion. We worked a lot with those, but we would go to other hospitals as well. But generally, if an abuse case would go to, say, Riverside or Ohio State or Mount Carmel, they would end up at Children's Hospital, and they have a whole team of social workers and doctors that are trained as well in the red flags of child abuse, and then you would work hand in hand with them. So you would learn, what would cause an injury on a child. What causes a spiral fracture or a corner fracture, or what to look for. It was for shaken baby syndrome, or skull fractures, or subdural hematomas and things of that. So you'd work hand in hand with doctors and nurses and just learn so much because you would take a vested interest. You become intimately involved because of the the victim. I mean,
Right.
the victim's a child, and a
Yeah.
lot of the time, in a lot of our cases, very young children. Like I talked about before, were not verbal,
Hmm.
so had no one to advocate for them. So you were their advocate.
Well, part of the reason why I bring this subject up is you mentioned on your website your experience, and there's a growing issue throughout this country with online predators and children being involved. And you being from Dayton, and Dayton's a high crime zone for specific children abuse, because of interstate traffic has a lot to do with that, I understand. And then you go from the Springfield area to Columbus, and you bring all that experience and background to Perry County. Hence the reason why I'm questioning these things here, because this is a growing issue, and I know people directly that have been affected by this, whether it be online or whether it be physical, or both. And that's the reason for these questions here.
Well, they're great
Yeah,
questions, and I love to talk about it.
yeah. You worked in the Narcotics Bureau. Explain what you've learned from this experience. Explain the benefits and downsides to this approach to illegal drugs.
Narcotics are a commodity, and just like any other commodity, it functions for I guess a way to express it with the principle of supply and demand, right? So there's a two-pronged approach that you can take for drug enforcement. In my experience and training, you can aggressively put forth counter drug operations to slow down, because it's almost impossible. It is impossible to totally cut off the supply of illegal narcotics into any area, because it's just so overwhelming. The goal is to significantly slow it down,
Mm-hmm.
right? To minimize the supply. Therefore, there's no the buyers can't get it in your area. So therefore, the chances of them to be able to use it and become addicted to it is minimized,
Mm-hmm.
right? The other approach is education to the population, most importantly to the children in the schools, our children, right?
Right.
So this is the effects of drugs. Okay. Now, the temptation for you to take those drugs are going to be there, whether it's social peer pressure or they're just there, right?
Right.
Don't do it for these reasons and these reasons and these reasons. Why we need to have law enforcement in the schools, even if it's in a small scale, because of resources, meaning money,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to pay for what we used to have, the DARE program. The people need to be educated, and our children need to be educated not to do these things. So you're taking away the demand, because if I don't want to take it, so it's common sense. If a drug dealer comes in here and sits down right now, he's not going to make any money with me and you sitting here, right?
Not normally, no.
Right. We're not going to buy
Right.
dope off of him, so there's no reason for him to come here now,
Mm-hmm.
because he's in the business of making money.
Yeah.
Right. Now we have to take into consideration the allure of drugs, and how they are so addicting, and what are the drugs of choice. What's our problem drugs here in Perry County? They're different than Franklin County.
Mm-hmm.
Here, fentanyl, which is everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, meth is huge down here. Marijuana is an issue. After tomorrow, it might not be anymore. Right? But those are highly addictive drugs. Your opiates, heroin, go along with the fentanyl aspect of it. But so once a person's addicted to those drugs, now what are we doing to help them? We have addiction recovery services that we can provide for them, and I think that law enforcement should be a conduit for that,
Mm-hmm.
a vehicle for that. The issue is now, in order for the any person to stop doing that, stop doing drugs, one of two things has to be removed. The person has to be removed from the environment in which they're using the drugs, or the drugs need to be removed, right?
Right.
So what's law enforcement's job to do? That we don't want to take people and move them out of Perry County. We want to take the drugs and move them out of Perry County. So that would be our mission, right? To get rid of the drugs.
Okay.
And I equate it to this, right? If people realized what addiction does emotionally, psychologically, but especially physically, chemically to a person, if the drugs are there, the temptation is too overwhelming for the person not to take them. And just take, for example, I'll throw myself out there. If there's ice cream in my house, okay, I'm going to eat it, right? I know that, hey, look, I'm on a diet. I need to lose weight. I don't need to be eating ice cream. So what do? There's no ice cream in my house, because I know that if it's in there, every time I pass that freezer, I know it's in there, and I'm gonna get a scoop. I'm gonna get a scoop. I'm watching a football game. I'm gonna grab a scoop of ice cream. I'm gonna grab a big bowl of ice cream. I'm probably gonna eat 2 bowls of ice cream, right?
Right.
Even though I know it's not good for me. Now multiply that 1,000,000 times, and therein lies the problem with taking meth or any other drug that you're going to be chemically addicted to.
Right.
And I hope that's a good analogy.
Well, you're describing
right?
the increased temptation, knowing something is at a certain location, generally nearby.
Right.
Yeah.
So and it's not, and so so the person that's addicted to these things, it should not be looked down upon. They're just human. We're human beings that are susceptible to temptation, and especially if it's something that is chemically that our body needs. And I could tell you story upon story upon story about how we would come across people that were incarcerated for a while, say they were 18 months or 2 years or 9 months, whatever. They become clean, really clean. So when they're first off the street, they may weigh 120 pounds and be in horrible shape because they're doing nothing but their entire existence is, when am I going to get my next fix? Well, now they're incarcerated, they can't get that fix. Hopefully, we have some issues within our jail systems, right?
But nothing's perfect.
Right.
Right.
But the vast majority of the time, and they have the desire to get clean. Now it's a horrible process, right?
Right.
To withdraw.
Well, there's no good process.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of relative. Horrible compared to what? Being on the street or whatever. I mean, that can only get worse there.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
But they do get better, and you see them when they get released from incarceration, they gain 40 pounds. They look great. They feel good. Their mind's clear. Now they go back to where they're living again, and you pick them up less than 24 hours later with dope or high, or in a situation where they, are back in that game again.
Well, it's the environment.
Right. You ask them why. So you interview them. You learn. You debrief them. Why are you doing this? And it's just human contact, right? I want to know. I care about you. Actually, I do. I care. So, and the answer always is, well, because it's there.
Right.
Because it's there. So that hits home.
Okay. I'm sure we could talk for hours about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You were an agent of the Ohio Organized Crime Investigation Commission. Tell me what that is and what you did.
The OCIC is an entity of the Ohio Attorney General's office, and it was put into existence, I think, by Governor Voinovich about 1986, and it was to combat organized crime, hence the name. And that entity investigates organizations that are involved in corrupt activity on On the federal level would be the Racketeering, Influence, Corrupt Organization Act crimes, and then on the state level would be engaging in corrupt activity. So along those lines, basically, if it's an organization that it could be, for example, we work cases there. Mainly, the focus was because we were Central Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force, which I belong to. We focus on human trafficking. Well, the people involved in human trafficking, there's a reason they're involved in it. It's to make money. And what goes if you look at the criminal lifestyle, where there's narcotics, there's generally prostitution, and there's prostitutions there and narcotics, there's usually firearms that go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one big corrupt activity aspect. So you can look at a case where there's a hierarchy of the criminal enterprise, where you have the boss at the very top, just like you would see, organized crime, mafia,
Right.
But then you have what you would call a bottom. We call them a bottom bitch, but you can call them bottom girl or whatever it is. But the real name of them is bottom bitch, is what their actual title. Their lieutenant. That's the person that runs all the other girls. But there's more guys. I mean, human trafficking and prostitution is not monopolized by females. There's males that are also that are in that business as well. So it's supply and demand, right?
Right.
But that enterprise is not just run for that. It's not just the sale of human beings. It's the sale of guns. It's the sale of narcotics. That organization ran a whole enterprise, a whole group of people that were tasked to go to big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, retail stores, Kohl's, J.C. Penney's, any place to go to, TJ Maxx, and they would shoplift. So when they would shoplift, they would steal items, and then they would bring them back to this person's warehouse or house, and they would then sell those things on the black market, or they would pay their mules and merchandise. So when we did the search warrant on that house, it was like going into a department store. I mean, it was set up generally like you would have tables full of brand new Nike clothes and shoes, and
Right.
it was like a store,
Mm-hmm.
along with the very disturbing circumstances that the people lived, the commodity, the human beings being used as a commodity.
Right.
And then, of course, the narcotics and firearms along with that. So what that encompasses is what we would call that entire enterprise is a corrupt activity, and that would rose to the level of a federal RICO charge, which is what our main thing was. So these investigations would go on for months and years at a time, and we'd work with every week. We met with the prosecutors on the task force. We had a U.S. district attorney, our U.S. assistant district attorney, and then the county attorney as well. Because on these cases, they would take so long that you wanted to make sure that every I was dotted and every T was crossed from the beginning. Because you could serve a search warrant today, and something can be goofed up on it, and then 8 months later serve another one, or actually make an apprehension or an arrest, and then look back at something that went wrong all the way back here, and your entire case is shot, right? Because
Right.
now you have fruits of the poisonous tree, and so in order to alleviate that, you put all our minds together with the brilliance of these prosecutors, and they were very smart, and the detectives and agents that I worked with. So it was a wonderful experience. I learned a lot from it, and I was very fortunate to be part of that group.
Okay. You also have experience with the Central Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force. This seems to be a growing problem, and from my understanding, it is something that is only more difficult because of online access. There's a lot of in-person tactics that traffickers use, not just online. That also causes harm. Can you explain what you can do as sheriff to help Perrycountians with this issue?
That's a great question. As sheriff, I think in this county, the biggest thing, and I'm going to go back to the education aspect of it. Let's educate our people, our citizens, on uh, what human trafficking is, first of all. And it's not exactly what we might see on TV or what we might read here or there. Um, it's not something the vast majority of how perpetrators of this operate. It's not like you're going to go with your family to the mall and your son or daughter is going to go into the bathroom and be kidnapped and you'll never see him again. That happens, but it's few and far between. The predators of this criminal activity prey on the marginalized. So you have somebody that comes from a broken family that's not um, being looked after. They fall into isolation or in a wrong group of people and are now fall prey to drug traffickers, right? So you have they fall into that and become addicted to drugs and then become even more vulnerable. So now a lot of times uh, people that are victims of human trafficking are addicted to drugs and stay in that lifestyle because of the drugs. They need to get the drugs that are supplied by the people that perpetrate that
Hmm.
um, slavery on them, which
Right.
is what it is.
Is it like they need their fixed drug? So what they'll do is they'll participate in some of the trafficking to gain access to those drugs or to get money. Is that?
That what you said first is exactly what happens.
I would just imagine it would be that's how it works. But
Right,
hmm
and that perpetrator pimp
hmm
knows that the person that they're in charge of needs that fix.
right.
So they're going to hold that from them until they do exactly what they want them to do. It could be
That makes
anything.
sense.
They could have them rob somebody. They can have them steal something from a store. They could sell their body,
Right.
whatever it is. So it's a vicious cycle. I think that and the drugs also is something. It self medicates. It takes that person outside of reality,
Right.
gives them peace for just that brief moment,
hmm
the respite from the life that they're in, that they're more than likely miserable in, and they see no way out. So that's what's so rewarding about being in that line of work. That's what I wanted to do when I left special victims. I went to narcotics. I went to the vice squad there because I knew that's where at the time they were pulling agents from the vice units to work the human trafficking.
hmm
So it was you got selected. So I knew if I went to Vice, I was the opportunity presented itself to go there. I was seniority based, and I knew if I did well there, if I really worked hard, that I could apply for human trafficking when there was an opening there, and they could look at my body of work and my career, interview me, and then go through the process. And that would give me the opportunity to work human trafficking. That's what I wanted to do.
Right.
So and it worked out for me. I went there and there was an opening. I was in Vice for 2 years, and there was an opening. I interviewed with some other great guys, and was fortunate enough to be selected for it. So I went there and really learned a lot, and it was very rewarding because when I went there, there was the guys that were there did it for they were the training was fantastic,
hmm
and their experience was just experience is so it's invaluable.
Well, experience is just training, but in reality,
Right,
you know,
right. It's practical application of your training, right?
yeah.
And So just learning from them, and I remember we were downtown. We got a group of girls were saved from this, their pimps, their perpetrators of the trafficking, and you take them down to the Children's Advocacy Center for forensic interviews. They're interviewed by a special group of people that are specifically trained to interview people. In their interview, the information that is extracted from that interview can be used as testimony, right? Because the questions are not asked in a leading way,
Right.
right? So they're specially trained for that. It's a fantastic group of people. There's prosecutors, doctors, nurses, sane nurses, your sexual abuse nurses. They're your social workers and your detectives all get together for these interviews. And then after that, there's a forensic exam as well, physical exam. So we take these group down there. They're all taken care of, and then after that, the social workers come in, and the safety plan is put in effect for these victims.
Right.
And now the process of healing begins. That's awesome, right?
Right.
And so we walk. There's a Tim Hortons right there in the corner, and we walk in there for a cup of coffee. We didn't get a donut. And a girl there walked up to my partner and said, "Hey, how you doing?" So, and that was a girl that was even trafficked before.
Oh, wow.
And now she's thriving. She's doing better. Right?
That's great.
Thank you for what you did.
Yeah.
A hug, a high five, and I'm like, that's cool. That's what I want.
And I'm sure that rarely happens where you actually meet a person who's gone through it and came out in better circumstances.
Right. That's the goal of everything.
And
right?
what a reward that must be for her.
It,
The officer, to see some of the work come back and say thank you, kind of a thing.
That's why you do it.
Yeah.
That's why you do it. And it's hard. It's hard work. RICO cases are hard. They're very meticulous. I mean, you're running. It parallels white collar crime. So you're looking at data of, say, financial records of people that travel all over the region, not just the state. And you're following credit card transactions and hotel folios and all these things. It's not easy work. And then you're doing the undercover work where you go in and you're actually making buys, where you're buying people, right? So you have to set, your mindset has to go from sitting in an office looking at computers or listening to jailhouse calls.
Right. Which I'm sure are very exciting.
You get a lot of information. But it's so what a great I was very fortunate to be able to work with those people. It was great.
Yeah. Okay. Can you do something to combat online child exploitation? Or what could you do as sheriff if you were elected?
We'll go back to education. Now, online exploitation is the perpetrator is looking for opportunity. So take away that opportunity. Right? And to take away that opportunity, it's, I believe, the responsibility of parents to make sure that keep an eye on what your kids are doing.
Now, which comes from what you say with the education part of it. Right?
Educate them. Hey, look, this is social media is out there.
The new landscape for this stuff.
Well, it's open season, and there's so many platforms. So what are your kids doing on social media? I mean, you have they're constantly back and forth with people. Are they taking pictures that are inappropriate and sending it to their friends, which is wreaking havoc because of it's ruining kids' lives because it's getting it's getting out there, and you know how it's tough being a kid, and they know if you're embarrassed because there's things out there that people are making fun of you about. That's hard for somebody at that stage in their life to be able to process.
Right.
It's hard enough for adults to do it, let alone young adults. So be cognizant of that as parents, but specifically to your question about child exploitation, whether it be on the level of peers doing it to each other, or if you have perpetrators out there that are like you see on To Catch a Predator, perhaps, and that's a real thing. So, common sense will come into play on the best way to combat that was, hey, what are you doing online? To your kid. Don't be afraid to get on their device with them respectfully, and you're not infringing on their privacy. They're your child. Now they might be upset about you doing that, but deep down inside, they're going to appreciate that. Hey, mom and dad love me. They care about me. They might be a pain in the butt by getting on, now they're going to see that, I'm texting back and forth about how much I hate this teacher or whatever. But the bottom line is they're seeing, hey, you're not communicating with some person in Chicago that's 48 years old and is going to travel down here posing as somebody that's your age.
Right.
And you're going to meet up in some parking lot somewhere, and then we're never going to see you again.
I don't think so. I don't think a lot of people understand how much somebody will go through to meet with your child. Like, there's a specific app that not many people know about unless you dive into some of these topics to any depth, where you don't need to sign in and have a username. And some of these apps, I'll mention one, Whisper. There's no sign in. You just post. And if I've done this, I've gone on there and pretended to be a 13-year-old girl. Within 30 minutes, I had a guy from New York wanting to meet me in Zanesville. Immediately, I just withdrew because I've had some not great experiences as a child, so it just brought back that memory, and I was like, I couldn't even meet up with somebody like that to show them, hey, look at this person, he's a dangerous person. You know, because we've seen those videos on YouTube as well, or To Catch a Predator, when you to expose these people. And I'm not afraid to meet anybody, but when it's something brings back a memory from what happened to me, for example, those are hard to overcome. And when I do that, when I did that on Whisper, and less than 30 minutes later, I had a guy from New York wanting to meet me in Zanesville, I knew immediately that not just as a parent, I need to be more aware, but I don't know how to tell the public how easy it is for this to happen. And it was amazing to me the amount of people that was in the comment section that ignored those messages wanting me, a 13-year-old girl, to send photos and videos to this guy. Yeah, it's one of the things you said was, as a parent, it's not your job to be their friend per se. It's okay to be friendly, but it's good to grab their phone right from their possession. Like, let's go through this. But be honest about it. Like, I'm not gonna get upset if you talk about how bad of a dad I am to your friends, because that's what I did when I was a kid. You know what I mean? But if you're doing something that's putting you in danger or putting this family in danger, that's something we're going to talk about. That's going to make you feel uncomfortable in the process of. So I think that's what you're alluding to with the education starts first with family. There was not a recent interview, but there's a interview of a known someone who's gone to prison for doing inappropriate things to children, right? And in his interview, the question was, how do you choose your victim? And he said, well, one of the first things I look at is the father. If he's a threat, I stay away. If there's no father at all, it's easy pickings.
Wow.
So it's not just the father's job, but it's a job of the father to be present, whether or not you're with your partner, right, but to be present around your children. not just present as in I'm attending my child, but when you're there, you're there. You're like, hey, you touch my castle, it's gonna be war. That's a father, you know.
Sure.
I think that's part of the education that you might be referring to, because that's
Sure.
how I view it. You know, you go touch my family, you look at them wrong. I'm gonna say more than hello. You know,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. And your children need to know that you care about them and that you will protect them.
And they'll see that when
Oh, there's no
when you grab
question.
their phone and you say, "Hey, let's look at this together." You
Right.
know, obviously those are going to be things that's going to be embarrassing. Some of that may not be a problem. I'm not going to pick apart and be, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You were a member of the hostage negotiation team. What was your part of that team?
Well, the hostage negotiation team is an entity that works in a collaboration with the SWAT team, and there's 10 members. It's a unit much like the task forces, where it's not seniority based. It's something that you apply for, that you interview for, and that they do a background check on you and a hiring process for that job. Uh, and we respond to hostage barricade situations. And that, back when I did it, we also responded on search warrants in a kind of a scaled down capacity in case uh, that search warrant turned into a barricade situation. So then, when everybody would respond, then, and you would start negotiations right away. It was a what we call it, an extra job. So when I worked on the task force, I also worked on the negotiating team. A fantastic job. We responded to anywhere from 50 to 60 hostage barricades a year. So we kept pretty busy. The training was very intense. We went around the country for different trainings and different conferences. We put on our own conference with the FBI, which I know I'm biased, but I think it's the best conference in the country. Going from different conferences around the country, it's at Easton, at the Hilton, and it's September every year, and it's called the Midwest Crisis Negotiators Conference.
Hmm.
And anywhere from 250 to 450, 500 negotiators generally from around this part of the country, come to it, and it's a case study. It goes on for 3 days, so that's how intense our training is. It's much like you see in the movies, I would say, except that negotiators, the hostage barricade situations are run by the tactical team and the tactical commanders. Uh, but we work together, and you have a primary negotiator, which is basically picked when you arrive at scene. It used to be, when I first started, that generally the first negotiator on scene would be the primary negotiator, because he or she is or was more. They started gathering information and intelligence sooner, so they knew what was going on, and
Okay.
it would probably be the best to be the primary. So we all rushed to be the first one there, because
Oh, yeah.
that's what we signed up to do,
Of course.
is to be that. But later on, as technology and we got better equipment, the first assignment was to get the command bus out there, which everything operated off of, and then um, you were assigned different positions by the team leader.
Right.
So you would have a group of negotiators gather intelligence, which would then be relayed and used by the tactical team. So if say you were holding your family hostage inside your house, I want to know everything about you. I want to know all your social media sites. I want to know your first, middle, last name. I want to know who your girlfriends were. I want to know where you went to high school. I want to know your favorite sports team. I want to know who people you hate, what's going to set you off. Like, say your ex-wife, she's not there. If I mention her name, is that going to get you fired up? Okay, there's different, how am I going to go about talking to you?
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to negotiate with you, to resolve the situation safely. I want to know who's in there. I want to know their names and, you know, what their favorite things are. So that's very comprehensive, and you need a group of good people to be able to gather that intelligence.
Right.
So you have several negotiators working on that. You have your team leader, that's the conduit or the connection to the tactical team, because you as a negotiator don't want to know what the tactical team's doing, because that influences your negotiating, right? I don't. If you're told to move, say for instance, I was a primary negotiator at one time, and I was asked to try to get the suspect to light a cigarette, to smoke a cigarette. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why? That's not for me to discern. I
Mm-hmm.
just do it. So my goal now is, hey, you know, to get him to light a cigarette.
Right.
Now, I did, and the tactical team was able to make entry and apprehend him. Now, I didn't realize that every time that he smoked a cigarette, he would sit down and put his weapon down and calm down.
Okay.
Now, I knew he was calming down because I was talking to him, but I didn't realize he was sitting down or that he was putting his weapon down. So now he's not on guard as much. That gave the tactical team a chance to enter the room. So all those things come into play. You have just like you see on TV, you have a secondary negotiator that's passing you notes, because the adrenaline dump and the anxiety that takes place when you're on that phone with somebody is pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
And then you immediately fall into your training mode, right? So, you know, there's certain things that you look at, the skills of a negotiator to be able to talk to somebody. But you might miss something. So your secondary, they're listening to the same conversation you have. You have your headphones on, so you might miss something. They're going to write something down and pass it on to you.
Oh, okay.
You might want to, right? So, so it's a team effort. Everything's a team effort. No matter if you're successful in your negotiation, it's not you. Okay, it's your team.
So you have just fulfilled throughout all parts of that team as part of negotiating, right? You've done primary negotiations, and I don't know what else. I mean, you gathered intel, so you've done.
I've done it all. I've done it all, and I tell you, I've been on over 300 hostage barricade incidents, and I probably was only the primary negotiator, I'd say, about a dozen times.
Yeah.
And a lot of that reason is because I live closest to the SWAT building.
No.
So I got tasked with driving the bus out a lot. So, and the person that drove the bus out was now in charge of setting up the computer systems. So you have a scribe, because everything that is said is recorded and documented, and then you debrief, which is a huge part of police work, is debriefing. We at one time we would sit down with the suspect after he was incarcerated or wherever he was taken and debrief him. And the questions we would ask would be, we want to learn about him or her, right?
Yeah.
We also want to, how could we do better? What did I say that pissed you off? What did I say that made you calm down? What did I say that made you finally come out? What did I say that made you not come out, so our tactical team had to go in and get you eventually, right?
Right.
So that's how you learn. And then you also debrief as a group, you know, that, hey, Schons, you're an idiot. What you said was totally off the wall. Why did you say that? You should have said this. And then I would explain why I said it, right? So we all learn from it, because we're all make mistakes. That's how you get better. So, and then we would use that as case studies later on, but then you also send a detailed report to the FBI for statistical purposes after every hostage barricade situation. So, yeah, it was that team was fantastic. It was unbelievable to be a part of that team.
How long were you on that team for?
6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm. You served as Fraternal Order of Police Grievance Representative. What is this position, and how does it help you if elected sheriff?
A grievance representative is a representative of the union. The Fraternal Order of Police is a quasi-union, right? It's a fraternal organization, but basically it serves as a union. It's your representative. It's your bargaining unit when it comes to labor management relations. When you go to the table to negotiate your contract, the union represents you. That contract should be solid, right?
Yeah.
And in Columbus it is. And we thank the people that came before us that made that contract so. And we should never forget that. Never take that for granted. Really appreciate what the guys and gals that came before us did for us to make that contract so good and make that job such a great job. And it's our responsibility, I believe, as members of that fraternity to know what that contract's about.
Right.
And then, if you so desire, be able to represent your brothers and sisters in the time of need when something comes up. And generally, now, the vast majority of the time, it's a citizen's complaints of some time where you would go into internal affairs and be interviewed. And the reason you're there is just to make sure that there's no contractual violations. And internal affairs is not a bad unit. It's not a bad thing to have. You need to have oversight.
Right.
So it was never a confrontational thing. But if you goofed up and you deserved to be disciplined, then so be it. And the union was not against that. But you would go in and sometimes if you believe that there was a fishing expedition going on or the questions went outside the scope of the the complaint, then you would be there to represent the member, and
Okay.
that was a great experience as well. And the FOP, the Central Ohio FOP Lodge Number 9, the fourth biggest FOP local in the country.
Wow.
It was no joke. They trained you good, and you got to know what contractual language meant, the spirit of it, okay, what it was meant, each section, and also the letter of that language
Right.
within each section. So you don't violate either of those, specifically the letter of it. And then there's a process to go to grieve if you think that if your rights have been violated, your contractual rights.
Mm-hmm.
And then the process to be made whole again is what we call, because we want that member to function as a whole person.
Right.
So that's what we did. It was great. And you asked how it would help me as sheriff.
Yes.
My respect for that contract, the quality of life that contract brings, not just to the member but to management as well. So when I do sit across the table and talk to labor, I was over there for 30 years, brother or sister. I know what is right and wrong. I'm not here to put the hammer down on you. Now, I need to protect management now, in the sense that this agency needs to operate the best it can. And that's my responsibility now to make that happen. But part of that, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinion, the greatest resource that any company, any agency has is human resources.
Right.
So without you, this agency cannot do anything. So therefore, my goal is to make your quality of life as high as possible. And so how can we do that? How can we work together to make that happen? And let's go about it. I'll bring a perfect example with the contract we have now we did at Perry County. On holidays, the people that work holidays get paid triple time. Okay, on holidays. Now that's a great program, and a person that works a holiday deserves to be paid premium pay.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. But to argue on management's behalf on that's quite a burden put on the budget. So therefore, to counteract that, we need to pull back staffing. right? So that we can pay that triple time.
Yeah, the money doesn't come out thin air.
Right.
Right.
You're operating within that same budget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why now I'm gonna have a skeleton crew working there on the holiday, which data shows is probably the busiest times of the year for law enforcement, whether it's Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve, right? Any holidays when people get together, and when families get together, you have the arguments come that happened 10 years ago,
right?
Have a few beers or whatever. Now, so law enforcement needs to, the level needs to be higher. The people on the street working it needs to be more than if on a regular day. Data shows that. So you manipulate your manpower on what crime patterns and trends and data shows. I mean, it's not just a flip of the coin on how you're going to operate your agency.
Right.
You study how best we're going to go put forth our resources, manpower being the most important resource. So you negotiate that. Okay, look, and that's a complaint from everybody in the county, specifically law enforcement, whether it be the village guys or the guys working the county, guys and girls working the county, because now they're running all over the place. You got one guy and one girl running all over the place.
Who sets up that agreement for triple pay for holidays?
That's negotiated. That was
between who?
Labor and management, between the union, the FOP representatives for the county, and the sheriff's office. Commissioners will sit down and negotiate with the sheriff, being that's your management, and they negotiate with labor, your sworn officers are in a group. You have your command staff, you have your fiduciary employees that are separate, that aren't protected by that contract. You have your command staff, lieutenants, and your sergeants and your deputies all grouped into one collective bargaining group, but still separated and negotiated differently, which is another issue. And then you have your dispatchers, which need to be represented and protected as well. I mean, without them, I don't.
Yeah, right? A little bit of chaos without them.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So how they came to that number, I don't know. I mean, it was just like anything else when you negotiate, you sit down and negotiate. There's give and take. So what. I'll give you one more vacation day a year if your pay increase is only 2% instead of 3% or whatever, whatever you can do. And the easiest yet hardest thing to negotiate is pay and benefits. Right. So that, because that affects the quality of life of everybody. That's how, because you're going to go home with that. I'm going to have the best dental for my family. I'm going to have the best medical coverage. I'm going to have good premium pay so that I can provide for my family. But there's other things that go into play on that. Time off, time's money. Right. What kind of take-home cars, what kind of equipment are we guaranteed? What kind of uniforms are going to be provided for us? What is our grievance procedures going to be? How are we going to conduct internal affairs investigations? All those things are negotiated. So at one point they negotiated, well, we want triple pay for holidays. Now that's fantastic. That's great for labor until you're working by yourself. So how can we fix that? I mean, to me, that's an easy fix. Because we both go to the table. We both want something. Right? Labor wants more people on the street. Management wants it to be cost effective. Right. So you can fix that. I mean, you can bring that down to make it double time. Make it time and a half, and I'll give you 2 more guys on the street. I mean, that's how you do it. So I think instead of my way or the highway, it's going to be what's best for the agency. Right. Okay. What's best for you? Because if you're not happy coming into work, then you're not going to be very productive. Right. And it's not going to make my job any easier. I want you to thrive. I want you to thrive, because the spillover effect of that is great service for the community. And then everybody wins. Yes. Right. So that should be the goal of a leader.
You served, let's see, I remember that one. All right, not to ignore, because you've listed this on your website as well. Not to ignore, you served and had experience with Traffic Bureau, Accident Investigation Squad, investigation of fatal car crashes, Flight Observer, in the Helicopter Unit Employee Action Review Committee, Division Peer Assistance Team, and you served on the Crisis Intervention Team. What is a Crisis Intervention Team?
A crisis intervention team is part of a steering committee of a county that trains law enforcement, first responders in general, but in my arena, it was law enforcement, to be able to respond to a crisis, generally a mental health crisis, a citizen that's suffering from a mental health crisis.
So it's training for like officers to deal with a crisis.
In any type of crisis, but generally it's geared towards the mental health.
Okay.
And you become part of it. You become certified and become part of a team.
Okay.
It's almost now to where every officer is CIT trained.
Mm-hmm.
That was the goal when it started, and I think they're getting there now. It's a fantastic program, and I tell you, there was a little bit of pushback from old school officers. I know when it first came out, the units I worked in, it was something, well, it's more of a touchy-feely type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't something that I volunteered to do because of the type of work that I did.
Yeah.
We dealt with serious crime. So what was a catalyst for me to become involved in that is I wanted to be a hostage negotiator.
Mm-hmm.
And there was stringent criteria to even apply for that. And one of them is you had to be CIT qualified.
Right.
Now, there was a point system for everything you got. So if you weren't CIT qualified, you wouldn't even get it. I mean, you get points for that, but you needed to get that. So I went to it. And I tell you what, it was unbelievable. I learned so much from that. Now, mental health is it's near and dear to my heart for several reasons. And but that was the training. I went through Franklin County, and it was 40 hours of you went out in the field and with social workers and went out and were exposed to what they had to do. Mm-hmm. And it gave you a whole different perspective on how to deal with an individual that's in a mental health crisis. And now I knew what the hostage negotiation team said you had to be CIT.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, but then becoming a hostage negotiator, your training was even far and above that. I mean, the training we got with that was far more than the typical CIT officer. But nevertheless, that was the starting point. And and then you're part of that team. Back in the day, before there were so many of us, you were called to certain scenes if there was somebody having a mental health issue, and then if they barricaded themselves, and of course they would elevate to bring in the hostage negotiation team out with the tactical team, of course, with SWAT. But a lot of the barricades didn't have to happen because those CIT guys and gals were doing such a great job being able to de-escalate whatever the issue was. And it's an art form. It's a skill set. It's a skill set to be able to communicate.
Right.
And that is a trained skill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it was great to be part of that team.
That's what I like about your perspective, because you got so many different training and experience. I think that would be helpful in a lot of different areas. If you don't know how to approach a person, then you with your training, you could more easily read a person than an average person would be able to, because of your experience and training. Because you now know when you approach somebody, your spectrum of seeing somebody isn't just, the normal area. You've seen that.
Right.
Yeah.
Training experience is huge, and the training, and then like we talked about before, the practical applications of that training.
Right.
But it's also passing on that knowledge and experience to the people that come after us.
Right.
And that's our responsibility now at the point in our lives and our careers. is, continue learning, because every day you can learn something new.
Yes.
But also pass on to the people below, that come after us, or the people that you're in charge of. Hey, you did a great job today, but maybe you would have tried this. It would have turned out a little bit better. Or you could have furthered the case a little bit if it's an investigation. Two heads are always better than one.
Yes.
Right? But especially if it's coming from experience. It's the old adage of, sit at the table, people that are smarter than you.
Yeah.
Or more experienced anyway. You want to learn from them, right? So that's what I think. What I like to think I bring to the table. I'm very excited about it. So.
From May 2022 to present, you've been Chief of Police in Somerset, Ohio. Talk about the transition from Perry County Sheriff's Deputy to Chief of Police and how this gives you perspective and experience. Well, because you were deputy for a short period of time.
I was a sergeant investigator at the Perry County Sheriff's Office. So the transition was unique in a way that Perry County is 410 square miles. Somerset has 1.2. So
yeah, but Somerset's a big part of Perry County as well.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's no question about it.
Right.
Yeah, I think Somerset is.
It's a heavily traveled area for a rural county.
Well, it is. There's the crossroads of State Route 13 and US Route 22. There's 15,000 some odd cars that come through there a day, according to some studies. And we have 2 schools. We have a high retirement population. We have 3 churches. We have about 600 households. That's pretty good. 1,500 people live there. Like I said, 15,000 vehicles come through there on any given day. We have the standalone emergency room, right? Perry County Genesis. So it's a busy little town, but it is.
So going from deputy to chief.
It's smaller. So being the fact that it is smaller, the focus is more concentrated. I was a supervisor when I was at the sheriff's office, so I'm supervising just as many people now as I did then. But I'm a policymaker now, right? And that's a challenge, but a challenge that I've accepted wholeheartedly, and because I think that some of my policy-making decisions are good. They're pure of heart. They're intended for the benefit of Somerset, not for the benefit of Bob Schons,
right?
And the benefit of the people that work for me. So the transition has been a good one. It's a learning process, and I enjoyed working with counsel. There's nobody I can pass off any issues to. I can't say, well, it's his fault.
Right.
It's her fault.
Right.
Because I'm the chief. And I embrace that because, okay, thank you for that challenge. I'll do the best I can to put forward, do the best job. But I'm going to take also the advice of my subordinates. I got a sergeant there that likes to speak his mind a lot, and most of the time what he has to say is very good.
Yeah.
So I listen to what he has to say because he might be smarter than me a lot of things than he is.
Yeah.
So I'm not perfect. The way I think's not.
The way I see it as a father and a husband, and as someone who I drive trucks for a living, and so I'm a trainer also. So I see mistakes as more good as long as no one's hurt from them, because it's an opportunity to learn and be better and not repeat that. Because if you're arrogant, well, it's going to repeat a lot of mistakes in the process.
There's no question about it. That's very well put. Yes, mistakes are just an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I'm very, very fortunate to have a very pro-police council and a pro-police mayor. It's very easy to work with, and I enjoy that. They challenge me. the mayor challenged me on budgetary issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's an issue that I'm learning. I think, running a household, I have some investment properties, things of that nature, so I know how to run a budget. But when you're running somebody else's budget, you're running taxpayers' money now.
Right.
Using their, you got to use whatever resources you can to accomplish the mission of your department. So money down here in Perry County, money everywhere is an issue, but especially here in Perry County, especially in Somerset, right? We have a small budget to operate our police department. So that's a challenge every day. And it's a challenge to find a way to use our resources in lieu of having to spend money to accomplish that mission, whether it's what clothes we wear,
Mm-hmm.
as far as what mission appropriate attire, I put it. Who are we? If we're going to go interview somebody, what are we going to wear? If we're going to go do a tactical mission, what are we going to wear? Not wearing the same uniform all the time. That's something that's kind of a no-brainer. How we're going to operate our cars? How we're going to use those? There's so many different things that come into play where you can use. There's two words that I'd like to really emphasize, and it's a training, and I steal it from Columbus. There's a training goal for narcotics, for our Narcotics Bureau, it's specifically for the tactical, or what we call the investigative tactical team, the INTAC team, the guys that do the drug houses.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The SWAT has their missions, but Columbus has a full-time tactical team that does nothing but drug house entries.
Okay.
It's very unique in the nation. They probably do more entries than any other tactical team in the country. And so I borrow from their training. Their training goal is they want to be the most professional and innovative investigative tactical team in the country.
Okay.
Now that's pretty lofty.
That's a high bar, yeah.
It's pretty lofty.
Yeah.
So, but I bought that, and that always resonated with me. So that's how we operated. The trickle down effect everywhere in narcotics was we want to be, when I was in the vice squad, we want to be the most professional and innovative vice unit in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the ability and resources to do that if we really tried hard. So you bring that to wherever you go. So my goal as chief of police in Somerset is to be the most professional and innovative small village police department in the state of Ohio. Right. They have to be reasonable.
Yeah.
Why not shoot for the stars someday? But let's start in Perry County right now. We'll start in Perry County,
mm-hmm.
and then now we elevate that. And if we initiated the Joint Special Operations Team to combat the drug problem here in Perry County with Somerset and Newlex PD, and I wrote the SOPs for that, the policies and procedures manual on that, and that's our training goal for that as well, is to be the most professional, innovative, investigative tactical team in Southeast Ohio. That's what I put. I can't even be in Ohio because Columbus is supposed to be the best in the country. But nevertheless, that you set the goals that high, and then you operate. You expect that from yourself, and then you expect that from your peers, and you accept that from the people that work for you, and then you set that example, and you set that culture, and it's attainable. It really is attainable if you strive for it, and that's what makes this job so great.
All right, let's get to how much time we got. Yeah, we're long-winded. I'll blame the both of us for that. The Perry County Tribune back and forth. Part of the reason why I reached out to you was because I'm not a trained journalist by no means whatsoever. I have a strong belief system that if you have something to say and you're able to say it for yourself, then I'm just an avenue to get that out there. That's all I am, right? So I understand they have a job to do. They got bills to pay. They got a paper to sell. Got no issue with that. But if you got something that you want to criticize a government on, then it's best to come directly from your mouth instead of having something in quotes. I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. But I will say to that is that article is well written, and it
Yeah.
was basically verbatim of what I said. I mean, what I did is I sent the reporter a statement,
Mm-hmm.
and he basically just printed that. There was nothing was taken out of context.
Right.
There.
It just.
But no, I get what you're saying
Yeah.
too. Sure.
My issue with reading something is like it has no tone. You know,
Sure.
that part of the context is like, what was the mood like, and that's hard to translate into text. So it's no criticism of them. It's just that style. I like this style better, where
Okay.
I can see you. If there's any questions along the way, we can navigate those. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. That's all. On June 14th issue in Perry County Tribune, you list issues that have been brought to your attention from the public. In quotes in the article, the illicit drug program, which has caused an inordinate amount of overdoses and aggravates our mental health crisis. You go on to say that the current sheriff, Sheriff Barker, had gotten rid of the drug task force and did away with the tactical team. We no doubt have a drug problem. What can you do if elected sheriff?
Right, and I'll just allude back to what we talked about earlier, the two-pronged effect of how we can stop the drug problem or help alleviate it or minimize it is two-pronged approach of a robust, aggressive enforcement plan to stop the flow of drugs into our area,
Mm-hmm.
and an educational element behind that to teach our citizens, especially our youth, that this is something that is not good to do.
Right.
Even though a lot of people can say, well, isn't that obvious? Well, no, it's not. Okay. Obviously, it's not obvious, to be paradoxical. But so that approach and the first prong is the training and collaboration with outside agencies to stop that flow of the illegal drugs into our communities. You know, I talked about the joint special operations team that we're putting together. What have we done to make that happen? That's very difficult to do when you're working with two agencies. Other agencies want to get involved, but it's hard because you're dealing with two administrations, two councils, just with New Lex and Somerset, let alone the other villages that want to be part of it. To get all, you know, the legal ramifications behind that, the mutual aid agreements that need to be put into place, the jurisdictional aspects of it, working with the prosecutor's office. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. An important thing to do, which I talked about a little bit before, was the training. What have we done to do that? We sent 6 operators to SWAT school up in Franklin County. We're one of the best SWAT schools in the state. That with prerequisites to get into that SWAT school. I sent 3 operators, and myself being involved. I'm one of those operators, and both we went to advanced SWAT school. We were part of the team that won the competition up there in that SWAT school, believe it or not. So we're giving name, you know, that were coming from Perry County. People were like, "Where are you from?" Somerset, New Lex, right? But we prepare for that. That's my responsibility as a team leader to prepare for the training. So we go up there looking like we know what we're doing, and we did so well we won. That's pretty good. I'm very proud of that. And then you know, I went to Ohio Tactical Officers Association Team Leader School. So that's one step in the right direction. And then the collaboration with Central Ohio Drug Enforcement Task Force, which we're both part of, and the Ohio Narcotics Intelligence Center, which is a great entity that's part of is brainchild of Governor DeWine, and he put some great people in charge of running that. And it's a data collection and technological aspect of drug crimes throughout the state. So we can take they have analysts there, and the analyzing of crime trends and data collection of crime reporting is how you police.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a centralized entity like that that can provide you with that information at no cost to you is invaluable. So using them, I went up there and met with the director of ONIC and spent about 2 hours up there, and it was a great resource to be able to talk to. So, and we're using them with a couple of our cases. So, and then the collaboration, I use that word again with, because it's such an important word with in law enforcement. You can't silo your information, or else you're just you're banging your head up against the wall. Because if there's drug activity right outside Somerset that I don't know about or don't have the jurisdictional ability to do anything about it, and the sheriff's department's trying to do something about it, but they're not telling me, then we're not serving the public the best we can.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So using all that, getting together and sharing information to combat the problem is so important. And then not just within the county, but the outskirts of the county. You got to work with Muskingum County, Fairfield, Athens, Hocking, Licking,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Morgan County, all the counties, because that's where it's just flowing in from, right?
Right.
You know, there's certain areas more so than others, but you got to work. Law enforcement together has to work. You can't isolate yourself in your information and your operational plans. You got to work together, especially when your resources are so thin.
Right.
And then, of course, the second pronged approach is getting people into the schools, getting and working with other government agencies, other county agencies that are out there that are helping with drug addiction recovery, or educating youth, or educating the communities about drugs. And, you know, say for instance, hey, you might want to go buy, you know, a dime bag of weed, but it could be laced with fentanyl. So the next time you spark a joint, you might die.
Right.
Well, you know, some guy might not know that. They need to be educated on. They might think twice about who they're buying their dope from.
Right.
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 They might want to go to Colorado to grow and get some real stuff. I don't know, but you get my point,
Yeah,
right?
I
You're not going to get it off the guy on the corner.
Right.
So yeah. So
It's an unregulated market, and that's what makes it so daggone dangerous. It's not known to the grower, not known to the seller, and even if you did, what recourse would you have if it was laced? If it's not a regulated market, then you can't go after anybody.
well, there's ways, but it's very difficult.
It's difficult.
Very
You know,
difficult.
if you have an establishment, say Rocky's Weed Store, and I'm selling weed that has laced fentanyl, then you know where to go to come after me.
Well,
But
Rocky, if it's regulated, they're not a grow is not going to lace their stuff, right?
Right.
Their job, their desire is to make money.
right,
Not that I'm advocating for legal
Right.
marijuana, but the people have to realize that drug dealers are not good people. Okay, now, not to saying that, you know, if your friend slings weed or whatever, that they're necessarily an evil person, but their intent is to make money
yeah,
off of.
it isn't quality control. It's to make money.
It's to make money, and and the harder the drug, and the more addictive it is, and the more detrimental it is to the user, that seller knows what they're doing.
Mhm.
They know that they're causing that person to become addicted, whether even if it's weed, if it's psychologically addicted,
Mm-hmm.
or if you do become physically dependent upon it, which is possible. You're preying on that person's weakness,
Mm-hmm.
knowing the ramifications, the consequences of what that person might die,
Right.
and knowing that it's being laced at the most primitive level. I mean, the cartels are doing it, so it could, the middlemen are doing it as well, because what does the fentanyl do? It makes your product more addictive.
Yeah.
So if you lace it, and you talked about quality control, they don't know how much fentanyl is it going to be a lethal dose,
Right.
right?
It's like they're reading studies to see how deadly fentanyl is, but you put the proper amounts in it. So
Yeah.
that's what makes it more dangerous. It's not regulating.
Right. You're rolling the dice. You're rolling the dice every time you take a hit of heroin.
Right.
Or if you're doing fentanyl straight,
Mm-hmm.
how much is going to kill you? Were you clean for a while?
Right. That's a big one too.
Right now, so now all of a sudden, what used to get you high is now going to kill you.
Right.
So it's such a gamble, and the public needs to be educated on that.
Yeah.
And especially the youth that hasn't tried it yet. In the cities when crack came out in the 90s, and even they still operate the way today. Is your first rock's for free.
Oh,
First rock's free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're hooked. You're chasing that first high for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you debrief people that are addicted to it. That first high on crack or meth or whatever is what you're chasing, because it's on the way that people describe it. It's probably inappropriate for me to say, but because the high is so intense,
right?
And you never get the same high again. You're constantly chasing that for the rest of your life,
right?
Until you eventually are strong enough to get clean, if you are, and that's very difficult. But yeah, so that there's your two-pronged approach, and a little more in depth on both sides.
What time do you gotta leave?
My appointment's at 1.
How much time do you gotta leave here?
Well, I gotta be at the VA in Columbus at 1. What time is it now?
10 o'clock.
Oh, we're good.
We're good for a little bit.
I gotta leave. Yeah, I gotta leave probably. It's only 10. See, my watch still says 11 because I didn't put it back yet.
Because I have 7 more questions, but I don't know how much we'll chatter about them. You know what I mean? So.
Well, this cut me off. You're saying, "Hey, you're rambling on too much." Just
well, I like to let you go. You know what I mean? Just because it's authentic. People get to see who you are. You know what I mean? So I just let you go. Okay. The other concern brought to your attention was response to calls for service, with long response times being unacceptable. What will you do as sheriff to ensure the public that these issues will be addressed?
Well, it's all about coverage. It's all about how you're going to allocate your resources, your guys on the road. How many people do you think need to be on the road at one time? Do we need the staff heavy in the daytime? Do we need the staff more in the evenings? Do we need the staff lighter at midnights? As some perhaps is the norm for staffing in most places. Yes and no to all that. So evaluate your data, evaluate your crime trends, evaluate your manpower in how best they operate. What's the what's the word I'm looking for? What do people thrive at? What are their things that they do best at? Right? Do people on your staff like to work midnights? Are they more productive at midnights for some reason, that they're night owls perhaps? Or are people better in investigations and they gravitate towards that? But use your manpower and how they operate to the best of their ability to make your agency function the best it can. Do we need, as you look at the calls for service and the importance or the risk, assess the risk of each call.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a gun run or you have an active domestic violence run, are we wanting to send one deputy there? I think not. Now, how can we make it so that it's a 2-officer run? Is it mandatory that it's a 2-officer run? Is that even practical because of how big the county is? If you got one guy at Corning and one guy up in Thornville?
Yeah, that could be an issue. Mm-hmm.
So, but how do you fix that issue? Do we divide the county up into different zones, perhaps, so that each deputy is responsible for a certain part of the county, and then you can always pull from that? Do we operate maybe on a 2-man car? How many supervisors do you put out? So my idea is to, separate, break up the county into zones. What that does also, and I talked about it before in different areas that I worked in patrol, is that it gives ownership to that deputy. This is the area that I work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to now intimately become involved in the people that live here in their lives. I'm going to see the crime patterns. I'm going to know the best way to prevent the crime here. I'm going to, if I go to a domestic violence call in the same house every other week, I'm going to know how to handle those people.
Right.
Right. If it's just, just a verbal altercation, probably they're arguing about, the Michigan, Ohio State game. Right?
Yeah.
So they're going to know that, and they're going to take, they're going to be invested in that. They're going to take, like I said before, ownership of that area. It gives them meaning and excitement to go into work and see the fruits of their labor every day.
Right.
It also gives the supervisors, the command staff, the ability to allocate resources the best they see. Say that that area's crime has decreased.
Mm-hmm.
So should we broaden that zone? I mean, the boundary lines can constantly change. It doesn't have to be solid,
Right.
right? So you change those boundaries as best fits your mission. The responsibility then would be on the supervisors. You want strong supervisors, first line supervisors in patrol. They're going to evaluate the crime trends. They're going to manipulate the data to be able to, uh, like I said before, best serve whatever the mission would be, and that is crime prevention.
Mm-hmm.
Patrol and answer the calls for service, whatever that call for service would be, in a timely manner. So all those things come into play. It's very doable. Officer safety is a huge issue. Do we need more? Can we take people? Are we too heavy on day shift? Probably, I think so. If you look at it, yeah, we're too heavy on day shift. Bring some people in the afternoon. Afternoon shift is probably busier. You have more. You see it's crime up to a certain time, and then it kind of gets dead. After bar closing throughout the
Right.
county.
That's some of the complaints I've heard, and with me dealing with police myself is when I would call, because Crooksville is limited on size like anybody else would be, and with us having a very low number of officers, lower than probably ever before, when I would call the sheriff's department, well, we got one person on duties in Thornville, and I'm not dealing with a life or death situation, but if I were, well, I'm now, as a member of the public, concerned, So, and I've heard this with several of my neighbors, the same kind of thing. I call the sheriff's department, no one's on duty, or there's only one person on duty at nighttime. So that's also a similar concern I've heard as well.
Right. I mean, we're operating one step ahead of a tragedy all the time, and eventually it's going to catch up with us. Whether or not the tragedy is because of officer safety and there's not backup there for the officer, or the response time is so long,
Right.
and we're pulling from other counties to come help us out. I mean, they're trying to do the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me. I mean, the radio room is running. If they see something going on, they can assess it and pull from another county, perhaps, or call from a village resource. But I think the political climate has kind of scaled that down a little bit too. It used to be where they'd pull quickly from, especially Somerset, and they're not doing as much anymore. I think because, like I said, because of the political climate, and that's understandable on a human level, but it's unacceptable on a professional level.
Right.
Okay. Now, the officer safety aspect of it is a big concern, and so we need more people on the street for 2 officer runs. And if we can do, like I said on my website, we'll have, and that's fluid as well. We can change that. And as I talk to more people around the county, I see that maybe there's more need, desire to have more people on the street, is even more so than investigating cold cases, which is a big concern of mine.
Right.
But it's what the people need.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And working together, right? My knowledge and experience and the people's needs and wants together to provide the best service.
Mm-hmm. I like a little bit what you kind of went over a little bit, but I think to go a little bit deeper, you said it's important to investigate cold cases, which is very important, but it's also that's a privilege as well, because if you have time to do that, that's great. That's what we need. We do need that. But that's a privilege only because when you are dealing with a problem that's immediate, that privilege is going to have to wait because you're dealing with something immediate. And I think that is something that is what we're currently dealing with because we're so low in officers. I've heard numbers that even with the Perry County Sheriff's Department, it's low in as low as 5 or more people going more than usual, which is understaffed. And here we're down 2 officers here, and Robertsville, I'm sure Somerset, New Lex, throughout the country, we're dealing with this issue. So, yeah, the cold cases are important, and I'm hoping that they can evolve over time and get solved eventually. But that's a privilege. I just want to mention, like that's a privilege. No criticism for anybody. I think we could all understand when it's time to mow the grass, maybe you can wait on doing something that's less important, like washing your car. You know what I mean? That kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's very well put.
Yeah.
Right. Also on those lines, and then we can move on. Excuse me, is the need for command staff to be able to be out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Me as sheriff, when I'm elected sheriff, is I'll be out there answering calls for service as well and helping the guys investigate cases because that's what I did for so long.
Right.
I'll have a marked cruiser. There's no reason for the sheriff in this county not to have a marked cruiser to be easily identified to go out there. I'll be able to effect arrests. I'll be able to write tickets. I'll be able to answer calls for service. So my command staff along with me would be able to do that. All hands on deck going out to serve the mission. It's not just allocating people that are underneath you.
Right.
Every person has a job to do and can roll up their sleeves and get in there and help out. So I think that would be huge too. Say I'm driving along, I might have to go to a meeting where there's a domestic around the corner. One of my guys is going to it, and everybody else is tied up and it's busy. I'll work on that. Yeah, I'll meet you over there.
Right.
Absolutely. I'll take that paper run real quick.
Yeah, meeting being the privilege, and this is being an immediate problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, handling the immediate problem.
Well, it's prioritizing, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yeah. The third issue brought to your attention was people believe property crimes aren't being investigated properly, allowing criminals to go unprosecuted, especially crimes of sexual assault and crimes against children. Regardless of Sheriff Barker's response to these issues, what will you do to protect the public from these crimes?
Well, you said a mouthful there, so let's try to dissect that.
Yeah.
The property crimes, just going around talking to people, lawnmowers being stolen. Up in Glenford, there was a car fire a couple years ago or whatever. Somebody torched the car, and there was no closure on that. People were getting fed up with it.
Are the reports being done, or is it just no investigation? What have you heard?
Both. There's no response at all, or they're not coming out and taking the report, or they're taking the report and there's no follow up. The excuse is that we're busy. The big excuse is, well, we have to serve the courts, we have to serve papers, we got to run people back and forth to jail. I mean, we could spend hours.
And then what you're saying is, in either case, you're not satisfying the public.
Right. What's prioritizing it?
Yeah.
And manipulate your manpower, your staffing to be able to accommodate all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your job. That's the job of the sheriff to do that. No matter how difficult it is, you still have to do it. Right.
Right.
So that's a complaint. How would you go about with the property crimes? Well, it's just coverage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest deterrent to crime is high visibility. Is the perception that law enforcement's there, that they will prevent the crime because they are there and present and visible, or they will respond quick enough after the crime to apprehend the perpetrator.
Right.
That is all about crime prevention. So knowing that, hey, if I go to Perry County and I want to goof off, I'm going to get busted. So don't go to Perry County.
Right.
But that's not the word on the street now. The old joke is if you want to kill somebody, do it in Perry County. You get away with murder there because the vast rural area. They're talking about, or the lack of a follow-up investigation on it. This is a missing person. The person's gone. They're somewhere in Wayne National Forest. Or whatever, right. So I mean, there's truth to that. Maybe not as much to you can get away with murder, but you can get away with selling dope, or you can get away with
property crimes.
Or we talked a little bit about child abuse. So the property crime aspect is road coverage. Get your guys and gals out there to investigate quickly, because you're not going to stop everything. Somebody's going to break into a detached garage out on Township Road 123 at 2 o'clock in the morning and take a side by side, perhaps. Now, what are you going to do about it? You're going to get your guys out there to investigate it, to take the report, get all the information, train them properly on how to take that report, document it properly, the narrative, be concise, because that investigation might lead to the apprehension of the perpetrator, and now you have to put forth a packet to the prosecutor so that they can be convicted of it.
Right.
And bring closure to that case. That's huge. I mean, we have to train our people to start from the beginning, the process of responding to the call for service, to properly gathering information, to documenting that information, to putting it together so that it's compelling if you do make an arrest, that the prosecutors, your case is so compelling that they have no choice but to bring it forth. If it's a felony, to the grand jury for indictment, and then being able to be trained to testify at grand jury, and then at a preliminary hearing, the difference between those two things. At a trial, all that's a skill set that's learned. Our people need to be trained on that. And then to help the entire judicial process, help the prosecutor do their job. It's a team effort. It's not like, well, we did our job, now we're going to toss it over to the prosecutor, now he's got to do his thing.
Right.
And if he doesn't get it done, then it's his fault. Well, what kind of product did you give the prosecutor? Was it garbage that he can't do anything with? That's not fair to him. That's not fair to the people you serve, is to get it off your plate.
Right.
No, you do a solid job, and then you send it over there. So all that comes into play with the property crimes. And then we segue into child abuse crimes. Now, like I was sergeant investigator in Perry County. Everything came across my desk, and the inordinate amount of sexual child abuse cases in this county was alarming. Okay, and the recidivative nature of it, the recurring nature of it, is heartbreaking.
Right. Yeah, I recently, in the last several months, put a thing on Crooksvillenews about there are more sex offenders in Crooksville than any other village in this county. I think there's 14 of them here. I don't know what to do about that, but I don't know why these people are, if they are reoccurring kind of people, I don't think they should be outside of a prison cell, in my opinion. But I don't know what to do about that either. But yeah, it's a major issue, and it only seems to be growing. And that's because you can be anonymous online. So I think that's part of it as well. But not that you can solve people being anonymous online, but it's a wild west of modern times.
It is, and the more so that I'm referring to is actually the perpetration of that sexual offense against the child. Now online, you're not going to be able to physically do that, right? Unless you're talking about luring them into an environment where you can perpetrate that crime upon them. That's a whole different story. But and it still needs to be addressed. And we talked about the biggest thing being education on that.
Yeah.
But there's bigger entities that, there's so many resources that the state provides, the Internet Crimes task force out of Cleveland is a big resource for that. And there's so many different tasks. Franklin County has one. There's so many task forces that do internet crime that you can work with if there's something. And we, even in Somerset, will get calls that from people saying, "I'll get this, that, and the other," and then you reach out to them. They have the resources to be able to track things, IP addresses, and things of that nature. But what I'm referring to here in Perry County is just a generational child abuse perpetrated upon by known suspects, whether it be a grandfather, mom's boyfriend, stepdad, whatever the case may be. Just case upon case upon case of those that there's been no adjudication for, and there's no closure for the victim. Now, I can talk in great length about that. But I know we're pressed for time. But that, as you know, we talked about my experience in special victims. That's near and dear to my heart, and I know how to go about doing it. You know, in Columbus, we had prosecutors that were dedicated to special victims. We had the luxury of that. Just like, you know, there's homicide. There's prosecutors that just do homicides, right? You know, they specialize in that, much like the detectives do. Here we don't have that, but that doesn't mean you can't work. And I talked about detectives or deputies working with the prosecutors to take cases forward, even through the, you know, the process of adjudication, you know, at the trials and at grand jury. Work together. You don't just throw it on their plate and say have at it. And if they're not convicted, it's your fault. What, you know, take ownership of your case at that point. Especially when it's such a serious one. But nevertheless, it's something that if we have time to delve into, so, you know, maybe at some other time, or, you know, it'll come to light throughout the campaign, it's very troubling here. And it's something that an excuse can be given that the money that was allocated for a deputy to work at Perry County and Children's Services was taken away, therefore the deputy was taken away. Well, I don't care. I'm going to dedicate a deputy to a detective, train him well, myself, and from, you know, outside resources, because investigatory procedures change over time. That's fluid as well. I mean, there's things that, you know, that they're using now that I'm sure I didn't use back in 2014.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right? So train them the best they can to handle these delicate cases and investigate them. And then that segues into the cool cases, because the vast majority of the cool cases are your sexual abuse cases. You got 25 years, right? The statute of limitations on those. So let's dig into it. And, you know, to bring closure to this conversation, I guess I'll say that when I became sergeant investigator, one of the first things I did was went to Perry County Children's Services and talked to them on how can we streamline these child abuse cases that we're getting. Because when they were coming in, they were just assigned to a deputy, and which had no training on how to properly do a child abuse investigation. And that's no fault of the deputy. Right. They're trying to do the best they can with all the other cases that they have, all the other reports. You know, guys are down 25, 30 reports. Coming to work with that burden on your shoulders every day is a downer, believe me. Okay? So you're already starting in the hole. And you're running all over. And you're going to have 10 more reports by the end of your shift today. So now what are you looking at? So I went, how can we streamline these cases? And then to prepare for that, I went and dug up how many open sexual abuse cases do we have. And the computer system at the time went back to 2019. Now we could have dug into the old CAT system and pulled more up, or I could have gone down to archives and dug up. So it only went back to 2019, and there was over 50 open cases. Wow. Okay. So that now that included adult sexual abuse cases too, sexual assault cases. So because it was labor intensive for the people that I asked to dig up the information for me to separate them. But still, that's alarming in and of itself. And then, then also, I looked at, since 2014, there's been 477, as of July of this year, 477 substantiated child abuse cases in this county, 477. That's a lot. There's 36,000 people in this county.
Right.
470 substantiated, and there's thousands of allegations. Now, Criminal Services' job is to vet those, to screen those allegations coming in, and they do an investigation. They do a great job. Their job is not to do a criminal investigation. Their job is to do an investigation to implement a safety plan if necessary for that victim.
Right.
Law enforcement's job is to do that criminal investigation.
Yeah.
So you try to work together, but you still, you rely on each other, but you still do your own job. 477 substantiated cases, and for them to substantiate something, there's got to be something to it.
Right.
So where are we at with those cases? Right. That's a very big concern of mine, and it will be my goal is to really delve into that. Now that might stir the pot a little bit, but so be it.
Right. You can't be afraid of little things.
Nope. Well, that's a big thing.
Got a battery going dead.
Hell yeah.
Here we go. All right. The last allegation listed on the article was toxic relationships between the sheriff's office and village police departments, including other county deputies. What skills are you going to rely on, and what are you going to do to build these relationships? I think we've already touched on like your background on like knowing how to bring people together. Is there any specific plan on like how to reach out to chiefs of police and other counties?
Absolutely. I think the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in any county in this state.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's imperative. I think it's an obligation for them to foster a positive relationship with law enforcement within that county and peripheral counties and contiguous counties, and law enforcement throughout the entire state, but specifically within that county. So, and not just with law enforcement, but first responders in general, fire chiefs, EMS chiefs, hospital staff, nursing staff, whatever it takes. I mean, we're all in this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I'll do is initiate a chiefs meeting, preferably on a weekly basis, and I'll be part of that.
Right.
Okay. I don't plan to have a chief deputy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is a reason to have chief deputies in some counties. I understand that. I don't think there's a need for it here in Perry County. The department or the office is only, my goal is to operate at 30 people. 33 people would be optimum. More than that would be better, but
right.
That'd be hard. It's not even close to that now. But we don't. I'm responsible. I'm not going to have a buffer between me and everybody else. The buck stops with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be involved in hiring. I'll be involved in supervisor meetings. I'll be on the road. I'll be riding with my guys and gals, and I will be at chiefs meetings. It's not going to. So I will have command staff. Majors, captains, whatever we'll do. That'll be department heads because I need good people doing good jobs. But to answer your question directly, is I will foster a great relationship by having these meetings right off the bat so that we can share information. It's also camaraderie, right?
Right.
It's a spirit of corps. Let's get together. We're in this business together. Collaboration, not competition.
Right.
When it comes to law enforcement. And I'm not threatened by anybody else being as good as me or better at what I do. If you're better than me at what I do, then I better get better.
Right.
But I also know that your area is being taken care of. That's good. That's good. that's healthy competition. It's not competition for me to keep you down. I'm collaborating with you
Right.
to become better myself.
I see that
yeah.
as we're on the same team, so I'm hoping you're better, so you can bring something to the table.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be the one teaching all the time.
That's right. Exactly.
I need to be a good student. All right. You bring up police suicide rates on your website. First, thank you, because that's not something that's talked about very often, because it's a real issue. Uh, you're not being afraid of this. What will you do in response of these high numbers? Because it's, you know, you're a police officer, so it's no secret to you the police officers, let's say you're a heating and air guy. You don't go somewhere where it's 70 degrees. You go when it's freezing cold, or you go when it's on fire.
Right.
So as a police officer, you don't go to a location where people are getting along.
That's right.
So when that's your breakfast, that's your lunch, and that's your dinner. So when you do that every day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Hence, police suicides. They're common, and they shouldn't be. How can you help with that as sheriff?
Well, the first thing you need to do, in my opinion, is you need to know your people.
Mm-hmm.
Become involved in their lives. There was a mark of a good leader. Is as we become involved in whatever career we're in, we kind of look at and try to model ourselves after people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we think that are good people and that know their job and that are good leaders or somebody to emulate. Somebody that I remember is a leader that always knew like the names of your spouses or the names of your kids. They weren't your friend because they were your boss,
Mm-hmm.
but you knew that they were interested in your well-being, your quality of life. That is how I model myself as a leader. I want to become involved in, the welfare of the people that work for me. So you're going to notice that. But you also have your supervisors, train them to be vigilant on the well-being of the people that they're working for. There's certain standards that you expect your people to meet, and that they're not meeting them. There's usually an underlying reason for that. So is discipline necessary, or do you need to call that person in and say, hey, I really am concerned about what's your behavior lately or your work product, what's going on with you?
Or your wife called and she's concerned.
That would be an even a more direct way of going about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So, and then along those lines, have a plan to remedy those problems. Is there a peer assistance team? Is there a employee um, assistance program,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which so many different agencies have, to where, hey, I'm struggling. I have insomnia. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I have people. I really can't get this last run out of my head. Where am I going to go? Am I afraid to go to my boss because I'm going to be disciplined because of it? I'm going to be suspended because of it. So there needs to be anonymity behind that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So where's the program for them to go to, for anybody to go to, for your dispatchers, for your first responders, for your firefighters
Mm-hmm.
who see some
Yeah.
traumatic things, your EMS personnel who see, death quite a bit, which is very traumatic. And, that peer assistance team that I think we talked about a little bit before.
Yeah, we did.
Was is a huge thing where there's anonymity behind it, where you can go talk to somebody without having somebody can't say what he talked to you about.
Right.
And then there's a conduit to resources that the person, the employee, can use to heal, right? And Columbus is huge on that. So I'm coming from a place to where that's not a joke. If you read, I mean, my website has drop down boxes, or you can click on something that will take you to what Columbus is actually doing. They have the city has a whole program. They actually have a building that you can go to that they just built within the past 5 years or so. That's totally anonymous, and you go in a private area where it's and you can get treatment that you need. But even when I was there, you had total free anonymous resources to psychologists and psychiatrists if necessary.
Now,
And
is that only available to Columbus police officers,
no,
or could an outside agency say, "Hey, we have someone that's and we don't have that branch or whatever"?
that's a great question. And I'll tell you this about Columbus: they are very, very responsive to outside agencies needing help, whether it's for law enforcement purposes, tactical teams, a helicopter, whatever they need. And this resource is no exception. There's actually full-time police officers that staff this
Okay.
unit. Okay, and we've used it in Somerset already.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now I have direct connections.
Mm-hmm.
This is a long way for Columbus to come down and do something, right? But
Right.
no, that's something that they can use. Now, I'm sure there's caveats to that, or there's guidelines to where their resources, as vast as they are, still have its limits. So I really they kind of stepping outside my scope of knowledge on how they would operate. I just know that Columbus has always been very compassionate about other agencies using their resources, because they realize that, hey, we have deep pockets here, and we have a lot of great resources that other villages and cities can use. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but the knowledge that I've learned from that, and how they operated and how they treated people with suffering from PTSD or whatever, it set a great example. So I come from a place where I was taught how to do things right, and experienced good, strong leadership when I went through tough times, because we're all human.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I'm, we all think we're indestructible at times, but it catches up with us, and I was not immune to that. So the example that was put forth by my superiors and the people that surrounded me, I mean, that it's an experience and knowledge that is, I say it again, is invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
And the spillover effect of that is what I can do for people that work with me and for me.
So if you elected sheriff, you could do something like that at a much smaller scale, and if not, then at least you have a connection with being able to contact and knowing who to contact about any given officer that could be dealing with an issue.
There's no doubt about it. And using that model, now there's resources here in Perry County. There's good people here in Perry County that do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the goal would be then how can we rally around that? How can we
expand it or whatever?
Right. How can we solidify it into a functioning entity that works together for first responders and their families? Start with first responders, and then as it progresses, as it gets better, as it gets more solidified, have it branch out. And there's so many different people and programs here that would be so beneficial, and it just somebody needs to take lead in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the office of the sheriff is that.
It's best qualified for that job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Has the ability to lead that,
because
absolutely.
there's no
responsibility.
There's no one village in this county that could man such a difficult task. We're especially now with everything being strapped and restricted for police officers.
Right.
And so that would only add stress to the individual officers who are dealing with these issues. When you're showing up to a place and the homeowner is pissed off because it's 50 degrees and they want it 70. You know what I mean?
Right.
As to use that for an analogy, anyway.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, I'm wrapping up. questions for the public. Any questions you might have for the public? Okay, for example, let's say you have a question for the public. However you want to respond to that. Also, give your website and how people can reach you.
Great. Yeah. The questions that I have for the public is, how do you feel law enforcement is right now on the county level in this county? I've already got a lot of feedback from that, but I'm always willing to listen to more. How do you think things could be better? What are your biggest gripes, for lack of a better way? What are your biggest concerns? One thing I would like to say also is, now that the political season is going to be more, it's going to ramp up now towards the sheriff's race. Our primary is March 19th. It's a 3-man race right now for the Republican primary. Of course, the election's tomorrow. Once that's out of the way, people are going to be focusing more so on our race. So
Right.
there's going to be a lot more out there. If there's any, so there's going to be mudslinging, I'm sure. If there's anything concerning that you hear, any allegations or anything derogatory that you hear about me, please question the person you're hearing it from, or the resource that you're getting it from, and then reach out to me. You can reach out to me anytime through my email at shonsforsheriff@gmail.com, SCHONS for sheriff at gmail, shonsforsheriff@gmail.com. I answer I get to him as quick as I can. I answer him myself, and I even come talk to you about it if there's anything out there. There's a lot of mudslinging. There's a lot that I've already heard has gotten back to me. I'm not going to be chasing it around because a lot of it's nonsense. So, but I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody about anything. I got a website, shonsforsheriff.com. Pretty easy, shonsforsheriff.com. Email address again, shonsforsheriff@gmail.com. I'm going to be dropping a lot of social media stuff here in the following weeks on Instagram and Facebook. If you want me to come speak to any of your groups or clubs, or I think there's an issue with me talking at council meetings, but I'm more than happy to come talk to anybody, tell you a little bit about myself, why I want to run for sheriff. I think we hit on that a lot today.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and to circle back around to when we started, people are concerned about law enforcement right now, for whatever the reasons may be, and we hit on all those: drugs, investigations of sexual abuse crimes, calls for service, response time. I have an intimate knowledge of what I believe those things are happening because I work at the sheriff's office, and with my skill set, experience, I think I have the solutions to those problems. And it would be my honor to serve Perry County as sheriff. There's 3 people running right now. 3 people. There's two challengers within the incumbent's party. I think that speaks volumes, right?
Right.
And I think it's basically a referendum on the incumbent, that people want change. Now, the voters' responsibility is now to look at who can best provide that change, who has the experience, in jail operations, patrol investigations, undercover narcotics operations, and leadership, and has a vision to be able, and the ability to move law enforcement forward in this county. So I ask for the support of people out there. I'm very excited about it, and it's an honor to be considered to be sheriff. So thanks.
Okay. Any questions for me?
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? You from Crooksville?
Yep. Born and raised here.
Okay. And then, where did you go to high school here? Crooksville High School?
Yeah.
So you're ceramic?
I am the least informed person when it comes to any sport on this planet. The least.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm aware that they have like football, baseball, whatever. My daughter's a cheerleader. That's the extent of my knowledge on any of the sports. This is my
Wow, that's
daughter.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So very limited knowledge on sports. I mean, extremely limited knowledge on sports.
So lived in Perry County your whole life, or
Yep.
how
whole life.
did you get into media? How did you get into being your quasi reporting type job here?
All accident.
Okay.
All accident. It all started, I think, 2017 or something like that. Like I mentioned earlier, I drive truck for a living. I wear a FedEx uniform, but I'm not FedEx employed. It's just free clothing, and I pull doubles or a single trailer across the country.
Wow.
And I drove to Colorado and back twice a week, and then on the weekends I go to Kansas City and back. And so I drive 3,800, 3,900 miles a week every week. And so
Wow.
when one of my runs uh, back in 17, 18, I was going to Nebraska and back. And those 6 years, I was on night shift. I mean, you mentioned some people are night owls. I enjoy driving at nighttime because there's less traffic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, come home and I would generally stay awake all night, and that way I could just keep my routine going. And so I'm awake and I'm in town, away from the house. You got this percentage of your brain that wants to just cause trouble, that's always in me. And then you got this like, well, what can I do that's productive, and it's a difficult thing to navigate because one's easier, one's the Twinkie, and one is like a bottle of water. One's more exciting. So I'm in downtown, and I've never told this story, but so I'm in downtown here, Crooksville, looking at Main Street, and looking at the bridge, and thinking, I've never walked across this bridge, so I walk across the bridge. And in the center of the bridge, there's a crack from one end to the other, a slight hump on the blacktop. So I get looking at it and I'm like, okay, that's weird. What's causing that crack there? So I took my phone out and I'm video recording, and I got a light to help with the nighttime. And I go to the end of the crack where the pavement ends and the concrete sidewalk begins. And there's a hole that's big enough to put your arm in or a child's leg in. And that hole goes clear through to where you see the water below. So I pick up part of the pavement, drop it through there, hits the water, kaplunk, and I'm like, that just doesn't seem right. Just doesn't seem right. So I repark my car, walk underneath the bridge, and underneath the bridge on Main Street, you could walk underneath it on both sides. And when I did that, I was shocked on the beams that went across the holes of the bridge up. You could literally put your arm through it. It was rusted so bad. It was just insane how bad it was. I just thought it was weird. And showing camera footage of it, of the ceiling, as it were, of the bridge, you could just see the shape of it. It was just not good shape. So I published a video on my Facebook feed, and it went what I call Perry County viral. Not 5 million, but a few tens of thousands of people have seen it. That same week, then Mayor Fred Redfern shut down the bridge.
Wow.
And so and I enjoy going to council meetings, but I only go when I have time to do so, because right now I'm managing 4 properties and a family and driving a truck, and I'm a busy little boy. So I go to a council meeting, a week or two later, and I talk to then also Fire Chief Ralph Hill. And I asked Ralph, I said, why did they shut down the bridge? He said, well, you didn't see the video? So I knew they didn't know who made the video. So I talked to Fred about it, and that video kind of showed what we needed to see. I said, yeah. Like, don't you get a report on how bad it is? He said, yeah, but the numbers don't describe what you see in the video.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot there. So since then, I have gone to bridge reports, it's either .com or .org or something, and you can go to any bridge in the country on the website. It tells you the last time it was investigated, not investigated, but rated or whatever.
Really?
The condition of it, the year it was built, the history of it, pictures of it. And so now when I have time, especially in the summertime, on my weekend run, what I'll do is I'll go on the bridge report thing, and I'll find a state I'm going through, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, whatever. Like, okay, I'm just go click random bridges, and it's all like a Google Maps thing. Click on there, and that bridge has got like a 30 rating, and just keep it just for reference. If it's below 60, it's already questionable.
Okay.
One of the worst bridges in the state of Ohio is a 19 on the northwest side of Columbus.
Shocking.
Yeah, and it is right beside of a hospital. I mean, like the driveway of the hospital, and then bridge. That bridge is a 19. It's the worst one I've ever seen. So I'm like, I have to see this thing, because if Crooksville was like a 32 at the time and they shut it down, what's a 19 look like? So I got
That's scary.
involved
Yeah.
into like this bridge thing that I still kind of try to do from time to time, because I drive on bridges for a living, you know what I mean? So that got me started in Crooksville. I'm like, okay, who do I contact for these kinds of issues? So they got me interested in local council meetings and things. So I started doing council meetings. So I can record these things. Oh, I'm not the only one who's interested in council meetings all of a sudden. I mean, I don't write much. I don't. I would love to do more writing. I don't have time for it. I work. I mean, I work a lot. That's just who I am. I'll do it when I'm 80 years old, I'm sure. So that's how I got started into it, was that bridge thing. But I never started Crooksvillenews. That wasn't no part of me. I started a Facebook post called the Independent Journalist of Southeastern Ohio. And the purpose of that Facebook page was to help inspire other people throughout Southeastern Ohio to do something similar locally. Well, I did that, gained a few hundred followers pretty quick. Then my 15-year-old son started Crooksville News. And he would take a picture of his bicycle at the gas station, take a picture of an old house. He got like 500 followers quick, like almost faster than I did. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're just he's 15. So he got up to like 700 something followers. I'm like, okay. So I sit down with Ryan. I'm like, hey, Ryan, people are following you, and you're named Crooksville News. They see your content, but you also have a power with that, and not that he's going to abuse that power. He's a very bright young man, very smart kid. I said, do you mind if I join, and I'll post things that's local to Crooksville, and then change my page from Independent Journalist from Southeastern Ohio to Perry County Press. And I'll post county things on Perry County Press, and I'll post Crooksville things on Crooksville News. So then I slowly adopted Crooksville News entirely. So now it's solely me. Now there will be people from the public that will send me things that if it's newsworthy, and there's a policy on that I go by, but if it's newsworthy that can benefit somebody, then I'll post it. And most times people want to remain anonymous, because I'll give credit to anybody. It isn't me that's going out and doing some of the work that you'll see. If it's a photo, especially, it's not me. Drive a lot. So that's how I got started. I care because I've tried to escape this place a few times. Probably not going to do it now. I've got a grandchild, and my youngest is just started driving this week. So I'll probably be here until I die. So now I have to care. Not that I didn't before.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm always that, and I've been interested in policing for some number of years. So probably 2015, I got involved in activism to some degree.
Okay.
When I see an officer doing something that I don't think is right, or where I see that's unconstitutional, I will contact them. Generally, it's on YouTube or whatever. I'll call a federal prison in California. I've called sheriff's departments in Oklahoma, Louisiana, all over. I'm not shy. But what they don't know is I drive truck for a living, which means I literally have all day to call your station until you hear my grievance. And the most I've ever called any station was one in Oklahoma, that sheriff's department. Oh, man, it's aggravating. I called them 187 times. It took almost 4 hours.
Holy
But
mackerel.
you will hear from me.
Wow.
So.
Well, I remember that. All right.
But that's what got me started.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate that. So as far as this is concerned, how do you plan on disseminating this and all that? Are you going to edit it, or are you going to?
The only editing I generally do,
because it's a long interview, so I don't know.
Yeah. The only editing I generally will do is I'll edit out like the very ending. Like you'll see this with us talking. All this is going to stay. I don't plan on edit anything out unless it's something that you specifically request because of a certain moment or whatever. I'd be okay with that. But other than that, I don't plan on editing anything out. It'll just be it will look like a normal, like a podcast would look like, with your video, my video, your video, my video.
Okay, you got to go on both ways. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Was I even on? Oh yeah, I see it's up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, very nice. Okay.
I'll edit in to cover the screen when it comes to showing, like the police suicide graph you show on your website. I'll show it at the beginning where we talked about that.
Do I
Probably.
show it on my website? What
Yeah.
do I?
Right there. That's on your website.
Oh, is that on? That's when you click on that Columbus Police
Yeah, it probably
wellness thing.
it probably goes to it then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what that's good. Yeah, that's what it's for. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I'll probably show that kind of thing, and I might show like a quick Perry County Tribune part of the article or something. Maybe I might
No,
not do
yeah,
that,
whatever. I mean, I didn't know if you were gonna. So it's gonna be like a whole podcast thing,
like that.
like a Joe Rogan.
Yeah, like a Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
But that will be like its full version, and then like I had an interview with Perry County Health Department, Lisa. Forget her last name now. Sorry, Lisa. And I released it the same way. After that full release, I then released question answer chunks to make it more digestible.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's awesome.
So
Yeah,
that's
like reels, kind of like mine.
kind of like that.
Whatever.
Yeah, kind of like that.
That's
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
That way, because not everybody's going to sit through 2.5 hours.
No, nobody's gonna do that.
2.5 hours.
I'm not
So,
that entertaining.
Yeah.
So.
But part of the purpose of getting a hold of you in the first place is, well, when most people vote, I would assume most people don't know who they're voting for. Oh, it's a name. That's what you. And I feel obligated to like help inform people who's behind the name, and why they are. So I don't have no direct agenda with you specifically. I like you. I do. I hear a lot of criticisms from a lot of chiefs of police in the surrounding Muskingum County to Perry County area in regards to Barker and the things he's done.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel I should repeat those because it's not my job to. Because I think those chiefs should say that, even though they told me they won't.
It's okay.
But he's got a lot of criticism, and I think a lot of it is honest criticism. But I think we need new blood in this county, whether that be you or somebody else. But with your history, I like you a lot.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk. I hope I did well. I wasn't. I don't know how I look on camera. I'm not. I worked undercover the vast majority of my life. It's kind of interesting because in that facet, you don't seek the limelight. You're always in the background, and that's how you operate. So it is a new adventure for me, but that's how you grow. You step outside your comfort zone,
Right.
And you move forward. Because if you don't make it about yourself, if you make it about
the work
and everybody else, so how are you going to help society? How are you going to help other people?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's no fear to it, because you can't lose anything. If people want to criticize you for your pure intent, your intentions, good intentions, then so be it.
Right.
Because there's no nefarious aspect of anything.
Yeah.
I'm doing, so why not?
The long-term effects of how people view you is generally best seen through that work.
Oh, there's no question.
I could use bad examples, but people like these people. Elvis Presley had a 14-year-old girlfriend. Today, that's not looked great upon. But you look at his work, we're all going to play that record. You know what I'm saying? Michael Jackson, we're all going to play those records. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I think Priscilla said he was pretty much of a gentleman until she turned 18 and got married. Right?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just saying.
I'll take her word for it.
Yeah, I'll take her word for it too. But if you look at the work will speak for itself and keep the audience looking at you better than what you worried about. Oh, look at me.
Right. Well, it's not when you make it about yourself, then you lose focus.
Yeah.
Then it becomes
it's a short-lived win.
And it's a self-preservation now, and I think that's what's happening now. What's the motivation behind Sheriff Barker running for re-election?
Yeah. Other than legacy, I can't name it. He's already the longest surviving sheriff who's ever continuously, stayed sheriff.
No, he's not even close.
Oh, he's not?
No, Dwight Radcliffe in Pickaway County is 48 years.
Okay, I thought he was already sitting at 48.
No, he's
Maybe
at 30.
not.
He's at 30.
30?
Yeah.
I thought it was longer than that.
Yeah, he took office in 93.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not even close. He might be spread. I think that's part of, he's trying to make people think for kind of like a compassionate vote that he's not even close. We have to re-elect him 4 more times in order for him to get the record, and that ain't gonna happen. He's already in his early 70s.
Right.
But the science of law enforcement has passed him, and he's not effective anymore. And we'll just leave it at that. But what is, I think that is huge, is and law enforcement in general, you know, as we investigate crimes, you should look at what is the motive behind what a person did. Right. Now, you don't have to, you can still successfully prosecute somebody without motive, but nevertheless, I always want to find your motive. I want to know why. So what's the motive for anybody to run for office? You would think in the beginning it's because they want to do good. Yeah. But over time, the romance of power and, the paycheck takes precedence. And I think that's where we're at now. Right. There's really nothing but ego involved here with him. And, I think even with my other challenger, who I don't think really won't articulate what his motive is behind it. I think he's looking to the future, but it is what it is, and we do our best, and we put forth, like today, all we do is just say, this is why I'm running, this is what I can bring to the table, this is what I'd like to do, my vision, and let's do it. So right. That's where we're at.
Well, Bob, appreciate it.
Yeah.
I may have it, Mike.
Rocky, thank you very much for everything. Oh, yeah, I'm going to walk out with that.
All right, thank you.
And I'm on my way to Columbus, so it was a pleasure meeting you. And so when do you think that's going to be out tonight?
Oh, it'll probably take me a week to put together. Then after that, I'll be releasing it.
And what site is it?
Crooksville News. On Facebook and YouTube. It's primarily going to be seen on Crooksville News on Facebook. Okay, so that's where all the followers are at. And how do I follow that? Just search it and follow it? You just on Crooksville News on Facebook. You'll see there are like 3,500 some people who follow that. Sweet. Which is pretty good numbers for a town his size. But, there's no doubt about it. I mean, how many people are in Crooksville? 2,500. Yeah, so it's 1,000 more than it's 1,000 more than that. You're doing good. Thank you. Hey, thank you.